was relatively painless tonight, but you can't tell I've been practicing, huh, folks? Good evening, happy Tuesday, and welcome to another hour of good nature. As I said in the email, it's a special night tonight. We have our guest Allison Kupar with us. She will be joining in shortly from her home in Saratoga, Wyoming, to tell us a little bit about what life is like as a wildland firefighter and also as a natural resources technician out in the wild west. So, hi, Allison, glad you're able to join us tonight. Before we get to the good stuff, though, there's just a couple little updates I wanted to share with you. Well, one isn't an update. One is just a fortuitous little find that I had. I found this feather. Hold it where it's not. You see that? It's not very big. It's about the size, actually, of a lip balm. And it is one of the tail feathers of a downy woodpecker. Downy, well, actually, all of our woodpeckers, they use their tails to kind of brace themselves against a tree as they're pecking away at it. So these feathers are really stiff, and they usually have a point on them like this. So and then here's the downies, they have these pretty distinctive markings. But I just thought it was really cool, and I wanted to share it with you. I will be adding this to our U.S. Fish and Wildlife permit because feathers, you need a permit to pick those up too. And then this one, I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera. Oh, yeah, it does. Let me just hold it. Actually, I'll put my phone here so you can see the color. Yellow tip. This is from, I believe it's a tail feather from, it's a cedar waxwing. So they're similar in size, but that coloration is also pretty typical. Now this one, I found it on my deck, and it was after I heard a little thump. I try to leave my windows dirty, especially during migration, so the birds can see them. But and this bird, I think it was just a little glancing blow. I didn't even see sometimes you'll see the powder that they leave behind, an imprint on the glass. I didn't see anything like that, but it was just hard enough. It knocked a feather loose. Had a whole bunch of cedar waxwings in my front yard. So this one must have been on its way to have some delicious cedar berry treats over in the front yard. But yeah, feather science, it's a whole other area of study that nature can get into. There is a wonderful U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They have a feather atlas that you can look up online. It's always expanding as they add more feathers to it. But it's pretty neat to explore. Anybody who's interested in that, I can send you the link later. Just let me know. And then Jerry, I think it was you a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned ginkgo trees, and we got into the discussion about ginkgo berries.
I did.
Well, yeah. I went and got some. These are from the ginkgo. There are still a few female ginkgo trees in downtown Geneva. And now these berries, I froze them after I found them because I wasn't sure of what their shelf life was. And so they're a little wrinkly, but I picked up a whole bunch of them because I read an article that they're kind of tasty. But a couple things to be aware of. All the articles I read referred to the poison ivy like chemicals that are present in the flesh of the berries. Now, I've never had a reaction from handling them, and I do react to poison ivy. So I don't know if it's a smaller quantity or if I've just been lucky. This one's one's got the cool ginkgo leaf still on it, the fan-shaped leaves that turn yellow and they all fall off like within a day. But I read on how you prepare the ginkgo berry seed. Now you don't actually eat that flesh. You eat the seed that's inside, and you don't even eat. This kind of reminded me of pistachios, the way they look like a big pistachio. But what you do is you put them. Recipe I read said to drizzle them with olive oil and just kind of fry them until they pop open. So here on live Zoom, I'm going to try eating one. I got to say, I did try one a few hours ago and I'm still okay. So we're going to try another one. Again, the articles that I read, and most foraging articles, most reputable foragers will tell you this. If you've never eaten anything before, don't go whole hog into them. And especially with these ginkgo seeds, even if you're used to eating them, you're only supposed to eat a small quantity. I want to say it's less than 10 at a time, because of whatever is contained inside. It can actually make people sick. So, but look at how pretty it is. It's this sort of a jade green. The texture kind of reminds me of soybean, oil chewy. And the flavor is actually pretty good. It's not nut-like at all. It's a little chewy. Rubbery is not a good quality in the food, so I won't use that word. But I was really, really surprised, pleasantly surprised at how good they are. And I got a whole bunch more that I can only eat a few of each day. So if anyone would care to join me in a little ginkgo snack sometime, let me know. We can make a date of it. I'll cook. Anyway, Jerry, I have to tell you too, that smell we talked about.
Yeah,
It's just as bad as we remembered.
it's too funny.
Even frozen, cold temperatures sometimes help to mitigate smells, make them less strong. But these are still pretty potent. It's almost got a stinky cheese quality to it.
I think they smell like barf.
Yeah, or puke, yeah. Have you been through downtown Geneva lately, Laura? They're
No, I'm just remembering the one on the U of I quad.
next to like Lincoln Hall, or
Yeah, it was
cut through
awful.
by the bike rack, right?
Right. Oh God.
Well, these are on State Street, just west of 4th Street. There's a house there.
No, I'm not.
This is on the Parkway. And so there was a whole bunch that were smashed in the road. And these were more in the grass on the Parkway. So
Do you think the squirrels would eat the seeds, or?
I don't know. I didn't really see any animals. I seem to be the only one interested in collecting these things. And yes,
There is one female ginkgo tree about a block from my house, and I noticed squirrels playing in it one day. And then the other day while walking the dog, there was a squirrel carrying a ginkgo fruit. But I didn't see whether or not it was going to eat it, because then the squirrel got scared by the dog. So at least it was interested in it.
There's interest. Yeah, then maybe they're onto them.
I don't know.
I've not ever watched a female ginkgo tree. I've never watched a ginkgo tree. I am fascinated by their leaves, but I've never really paid any attention to their role, in our local ecology. But guess I'll have to go back.
Yeah, we'll have to catch a squirrel in the act for it to be confirmed.
See, well, I guess it would make sense, because they always say it's only us humans that have the problem with the oils that are in the poison ivy. So maybe we're the only animals that have problems with the flesh too of the berries. But anyway, I just thought you'd like to know. And I've I don't want to overdo. I've had 2 today. That's all I'm going to eat. And I actually cooked 5. So I've got more snacks for tomorrow. If anybody wants to stop by the office here. Let's see, I had one more update, and that is going to be through the screen share. But before we do that, Allison, are you on?
Yes, I am on.
There she is. Why don't you turn your camera on and we'll all say hi to Allison.
Hello.
Here she is. And you're not alone. You've got your own tech support puppy there with you, right?
Yeah, she currently stepped out for a water break. So
Good for her. So,
or
yeah,
snack break.
Nova the Wonder Dog might make an appearance later on. But Allison, you want to just give us a little introduction while we can see your face of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so hello, my name is Allison Kupar. Pam, my good friend, has invited me to talk about wildland firefighting in the West. I'm actually originally from the Campton Hills area, and my main job, so I'm not actually like, my main job is not wildland firefighting. I am a firefighter, but it's not my main job. My main job is actually the wildlife crew lead for my district. So I do a lot of wildlife and wildlife surveys and making sure that we are getting our surveys done and making sure that the crew is safe. But when everything is said and done and our busy season comes to an end, I'm allowed to go out on fires, and I have been doing that for, I think I started my wildland firefighting career in 2015, so on and off. But yeah, and Pam brought up the downy woodpecker, which I have to kind of show my wildlife side a little bit, but woodpeckers have some really cool skulls and tongues. Their tongue is semi-retractable, actually. And if you ever look at a woodpecker's skull, some species have their tongue wrapped around their eye orbital. So that's pretty crazy. I think it's pretty cool. Nature's weird, and that's amazing, and something to nerd out about. But also with woodpeckers, to tie into fire, they're really important to fire ecology, because once a fire goes through, some trees die, and those dead trees are prime habitat for bugs. And then the bugs bring in the birds, and one of those birds are woodpeckers. And the fire is actually really important for some of our Western sensitive species, like the black-backed woodpecker and the three-toed woodpecker. And birds, they eat bugs, but they also eat plants and berries. And so they poop those berries and seeds out, and the fire has cleared away the soil or most of the brush, so it's prime habitat for those seeds to establish. So the cycle of life continues on after a huge event like that. So yeah, nice little circle of life there.
Allison, I'm looking, I know somewhere around here I've got a woodpecker skull. I just can't seem to find it amongst the rabble here on my desk. If it comes up before the end of the program, I will find it. Somewhere out on the circle driveway in front of Hickory Knolls, and I don't know how it got there, because we never saw the actual flicker that the skull came from. But a guy was picking up his son one day, and he mentioned a skull out on the driveway, so we all had to run out and check it out. And sure enough, you could see is it the hyoid apparatus that links the tongue?
Yeah, it's
on
like
the
this.
skull?
Yeah, it's really weird looking, but it's super cool. Weird but cool,
Yeah, if I can find it, I'll show it to you later. But with that, let's go ahead and flip over to our screen share for tonight. I just have one photo, and then Allison will turn it over to you, and we'll go through what your life has been like the last couple of months. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Let's see what we got here. Here. Make this into a slideshow. There we go. So this is just another really quick update. I'd actually thought I was going to bring the whole egg case, but still sitting in my kitchen. Remember the European praying mantis? Well, she's still hanging tough, still living in my kitchen in a little critter keeper on the counter. The insects to feed her have gotten harder to find, but she actually is starting to show more interest in the dubia roaches, the small roaches that we keep at Hickory Knolls to feed our the bearded dragons there. So, but about a week and a half ago, she refused everything. She wouldn't eat her flies. She wouldn't eat her. I tried offering her mealworms. I tried the roaches. I tried some grubs that a coworker had dug up. Not cool grubs like stag beetle grubs. These were some Japanese beetle grubs, but anyway, it didn't matter because she didn't like them. Little did I know that she was getting ready to create this othika or egg case. It's not a real big one, but she also, this is probably full of infertile eggs. Her abdomen has gone down in size a little bit, but I kind of wonder if there's enough where she might try to produce another one. The day after she made this egg case, she ate a dubia roach. So she was a hungry girl. But I thought you would all appreciate that little update. If she continues to do well, she might be another special guest sometime. So that was pretty much all I had for local nature. Allison, I think we'll turn it over to you here. Let's start off with this awesome photo here.
Yes. So a few weeks back, well, actually not a few weeks back, it's been like a month now, but at the end of August and September, so once my field season is winding down, I'm allowed to go out on fires when they need people to draw from. So what my job is, again, I'm a wildlife biologist, but I'm also part of the militia firefighting crew. So I am a trained firefighter, and whenever things get busy for the firefighters, they ask the militia folks, which can be anywhere from anybody who's certified. They pull from that kind of names list. They call around, and you're usually given about 24 to 48 hours to get your stuff ready, and then you're sent on an engine out and sent out. And so it gets really interesting, especially like the 24 hours, you know, trying to find a dog sitter in my situation. But luckily I have a bunch of coworkers that are awesome, and they pitch in. And so I was sent out to Idaho on an engine module. So there were 5 of us on an engine, and we were sent out to northern Idaho or north central Idaho, out in the Clearwater National Forest. And basically the place where I was at was really remote. It was basically, you drive down the highway until it hits a dirt road and you're there.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were a few days in. We were there for severity. A severity role is when you are kind of like auxiliary. They're expecting like storm events, and they need all the people they can get. And so we do a lot of patrolling around and just on standby, getting ready for that initial attack for fire. And I think it was about like 3 to 4 days in, there was a holdover fire. So holdover fire is when a storm has gone through, and like a little ember or something smoldering is small enough where it doesn't put out a smoke, or it doesn't put up enough heat for the infrared flights that they fly over the forest. So it was a week after the last storm, and a fire of the right conditions. It got enough oxygen, it was hot enough, it was dry enough that it took off. And so on the morning of my 4th day, we usually started our days at 7 o'clock. And a half an hour later, my engine boss was pointed to myself and another crew members and said, "You two, you're getting on a helicopter and being flown into the wilderness in about an hour." So
now the Allison, was this was a how did was this fire started
yes, so
by a
this
storm?
this was the same fire that I was flown out to.
Okay.
So it started off as like an 3-acre fire.
Like
And then,
from lightning or
yeah, this was from lightning from a storm that was that happened a week before.
okay.
Yeah, so holdover fire. And then it blew up to an acre to 3-acre fire, and they thought that we could catch it by flying us into the wilderness and trying to dig line around it. And digging line is basically trying to dig a fire break that's about 2 feet or more to bare minimum soil so that there's nothing that the fire can burn. And so before we were flown out, we had just an hour to make sure that we had enough food for 72 hours in the wilderness, and made sure that we had enough just supplies that could sustain us for 72 hours. And then we had to weigh.
Okay, hold on, wait a minute. Food for 72 hours. What are we talking here? Are we talking sandwiches, or are we talking
Oh, I wish.
or...
No, we always have an MRE in our packs.
Okay.
So meal ready to eat. I forgot the acronym for that. But basically freeze-dried food. We have enough for our breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just having enough calories for those 72 hours. I forgot how many I shoved in my bag, but we had quite a bit. But
Okay.
yeah, we had to weigh.
Right.
Yeah.
Get the essentials covered, and we can go on and fire.
Yeah. I was handed a box of Insta coffee though. That was great.
Chew on this.
Yeah, this is essential. Take it with you. But yeah, we had to weigh our stuff because with aircraft you have to weigh everything so that it's safe enough for the pilots, the aircraft, and yourself. And so to be a firefighter, to be a qualified firefighter, you have to do what is called a pack test, and you have to pass it. And it's kind of like a physical fitness test. And you have to do 3 miles in 45 minutes with 45 pounds on your back, and you can't run. It's a quick walk. So it's a brisk walk. And if you run, you're disqualified. So
I'm out.
you have to pass that every year. So my pack usually weighs about 35 pounds to 40 pounds, depending on if I have an extra water bottle or not. It just depends on the terrain.
Oh.
And then you have your tool, which is like the Pulaski, which can, be anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10 pounds. And then we have our 14-day bag, which is basically enough like stuff you need for a 14-day roll, and your tent and your sleeping bag. So you have a lot of gear.
Pulaski, is that like a shovel or a pick or a...
It's kind of like a hoe and an axe. So like one side is a hoe and the other side is an axe. It's great for breaking roots. Did you know that fire can actually travel underground via roots? They'll burn through the roots system underground. And so you can be fighting a fire and then all of a sudden the fire pops up behind you because it traveled through the roots.
Oh.
So,
is that when you're in forest that is got a lot of dead trees, or
any forest really? I've seen it happen in Oregon when I was working there, and it can travel under the duff as well, like that thick pine needle layer. So yeah, that's an interesting side of fire. So we use the Pulaski and other tools to break those roots so that they don't travel through our line, basically our digging line. So we get up there, and we also get some air support on that fire because it was starting to heat up. So with fires, your primary job as a firefighter is to obviously stop the fire. But how do you do that? There's three big what's the word I'm looking for? 3 components that feed wildfires or fire in general. You have your oxygen, you have your fuel, and then you also have heat. And so as a firefighter, your job is to break that cycle, or take away one of those components to beat down the fire. And so we had air support that day. We had both the iconic red spewing aircraft, which sprays retardant. And then we also had helicopters that drop buckets. There's different, I could go all day about like what kind of types of aircraft that is used, but we had a Chinook helicopter and also various other smaller helicopters. And yeah, that Chinook definitely got pretty close to where we were at, and we got wet. We got a bucket dropped nearby us, which was not fun.
Well, that
Especially
was
with all the
this, right?
snags.
This was the,
That was, yeah, the terrain. That what you didn't see is the slope behind those trees. That was fun to hike down.
and the Chinook was dropping, it wasn't water, right? It was,
Oh, the Chinook was dropping water, but the aircrafts, what you see, you can kind of see in this photo, it's kind of small, but you can see the red tinge on the ground there. That is called retardant, and it is a chemical that is supposed to stop fire, or it prevents things from burning quickly, or in general, if depending on how hot the fire is burning, it's supposed to slow it down. But we did get painted a few times, which was not fun because that stuff is uncomfortable, and it's waxy and just not a good feeling on your skin while you're working.
oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, you would see so when they do retardant drops, they have a pilot plane, which shows where the air tanker is supposed to drop its load. And we would see it, and they do a little puff of smoke for the dry run so that we could see it, and okay, we'll get out of the way. Well, a few times we would see that, we'd be like, okay, it's gonna drop over there, it'd be fine, and get out of the way. And then the pilot plane comes right over us, and we're like, that's not where you said you were gonna drop, and then we get painted. Yeah. So that happens. But we spent about, let's see.
Go back to this one again.
Yeah, that one did blow up. We tried our best to stop it, but like with nature, the force of nature, fire is just one of those forces that it can rip. Yeah.
Is it mainly wind that can cause a fire to get out of control?
It's those three components. Wind is a huge factor. Let's see, I saw a question in the chat here, if you don't mind me answering it. See, the question is, in really remote areas away from personal property, are fires ever allowed to burn until they go out naturally? And how do officials decide where to draw the fire line? In the past, yes, like in the wilderness areas, they do, but that location that we were dropped off, they were worried about a community that was downslope from the fire in the canyon below. And so they wanted to stop it in as far away from the community as possible. So in this photo, we are very close to the community. A few days after I was picked up from the wilderness, we were reassigned to the fire here, and mostly on structure protection because the fire it ripped. It was probably one of the scariest fires I've ever been on, especially when it started getting into that community. And we call those like the rural communities, and also in cities like around the forest, the area that meets forest and urban areas is called WUI, which is wildland urban interface. And those are very difficult fires because you are trying your best to save as much resources and personal property as possible. And there are programs, especially here out west, called FireWise, and it kind of gives you guidelines to help make your property defensible against fires. It's not 100%, protective, but it gives your house a chance to survive. And it's basically clearing out all wood and debris from underneath your house, cut away brush from your house, cut trees away from your houses. You can still have trees like near your house, but if it's really close by to your house, and if that tree basically if a tree that's on fire falls, will it touch your house? And if you say yes, you kind of have to mitigate that and cut like I think it's about 200 feet. You can still have like short trees, but you have to limb them up. It's just, it gets really messy when it comes to urban wildland interface, because there's a lot of factors, especially like in these communities where they're reliant on propane tanks.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that can get really, really spicy really quick. But we tried our best, and then they evacuated us out. And then we came back to the fire later, and it got pretty scary there for a little bit. When it was charging towards the town, beforehand we had a few days to prep for this fire. We put out sprinkler systems, made sure that we cleared away from houses, and put out pumps as well, water pumps, to keep those sprinklers going. And we were setting up those pumps, and all of a sudden the wind picked up. Like the fire was sucking in the wind, and you could hear like these mature trees that were 18 inches in diameter or more just snapping in half.
Oh,
And
man.
then you can feel the fire just suck in that wind, and it went oh man, it went a mile in under 10 minutes. So
Fire
that's how
did?
the fire did. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So
And that was,
these sprinklers you set up, there's no fire hydrants out there, right?
no. And that's why we utilize like what we're given, that nature gives us, like creeks and rivers. And we do have engines that we do supply water to, and we do set up, they're kind of like these, what are they called? I don't know what the technical term is, but they're these huge kind of like kiddie pools kind of thing, but they're
Okay.
huge. Like they're the portable pools kind of thing, so that we can fill up with our water or engines, and then we hook a hose into it with these pumps that can supply water to those sprinkler systems.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, this picture we're looking at, are those hoses there on the right? What is that? And then,
No,
so this is after you had to pull away, right?
yeah, this was after evacuating from when the fire went a mile in under 10 minutes. And that's actually a landing point for a helicopter. The X on the ground is for a helicopter to land. This was one of our evac sites.
Sorry.
So that, no worries.
I'm trying to get the black bar to go away.
So there's a lot involved in fire. We always have like an escape route. We always have like an evacuation site for a helicopter in case of a medical incident. And so this is one of our helivac spots. So in case the firefighter did get injured, they could be medevaced out quickly. And so this is actually an airstrip. It's an active airstrip for the rural community out there. And let me tell you how remote this area is. Not this particular airstrip, but another community not too far away from here has like the last aerial postal service in the lower 48. So there is postal service, aerial postal service up in Alaska, but this is the last in the lower 48. So it was a really remote setting. So we really relied on those helicopters to get people in and out of the fire. We also had something going back to the first day that we were working on the fire. We did have some smoke jumpers, so firefighters who jump out of planes with parachutes.
Now,
Yeah,
for your training, like, because I've never been in a helicopter before, I don't know, how I would feel about that. Is that part of the training, is to get used to?
No. No. I'm used to helicopters because just as a fun thing to do, my parents took me on helicopter rides, when I was younger. But so I was used to it. But some people I've heard some stories of people just yakking in those things, and there's
Yeah,
nothing you can do about it.
especially if you're, you're on short notice and you just had a big meal and you got to get in this thing that bounces all
Yeah.
around and
Yeah.
wow.
But that brings up an important part too, is that there are various different roles in the firefighting world and like different crews. So I was on an engine crew. So on, one of those big engines, there's different types of engines too. I think later on, you'll see a type 6 engine, which is a smaller engine. Don't know if you want to scroll down. Oh wait, no, I don't think I put a picture of that. Oh, darn it. Anyway, a type 6 engine is basically like a heavy duty truck with a hose reel and a hose pump. But then a type 3 is a huge engine that holds about like 500 gallons of water. And usually those engines are used as a water tender and like initial attack too, because we could douse a fire with a lot of water at once. But then you have, so those are the engine crews, usually like a crew of 5. And then you have the hand crews, which can go all the way up to like 20 people. And those are the folks that are really ground and pound, digging the line around the fire. And yeah, I went on a 20-man hand crew last year down in Colorado. That was a lot of fun. It was hard work because we were working, well, with all these fires, you work anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a
Oh my
day.
gosh.
And so it's, especially if it's a very active fire, you're right up near the flames trying to, beat this fire before it gets even bigger. And then you have hell attack, which is basically kind of like engines, except they work with helicopters. They can also be hand crews too, depending on what the need of the fire is. But hell attack crews are also the ones that help with gearing up helicopters or making sure the measurements are right, making sure people who aren't on the hell attack know how to work around helicopters, because there are certain areas that are very dangerous to be in around a helicopter, because the rotating blades and it's kind of on an angle, and so they tell you how to walk to a helicopter if you're not used to being around a helicopter. And then you have the smoke jumpers, which those are, it's a very competitive field in the smoke jumper world, because you have to be very physically fit and you have to be able to work remotely. And it's a very competitive job opening, and there's different training for that. And then you have rappellers, which rappel out of helicopters. And they're also
You got
used
a
for
rope, you just kind of jump out and
rappel down using
but
climbing gear.
there's no, you're just repelling in the air, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of different firefighting aspects to be a part of. I've only been on the hand crew and engine. I like being part of the engine. I like being able to just hit a fire quickly and be able to have the water there too, and to help other like hand crews with water as well. But it's just a personal preference. But
Now
yeah.
this fire here, this is a different one, right? That we're
Yes.
looking at now. This is not that other one. It eventually got put out, right? The one in Idaho. That's
Yeah, it did. It was very scary for a few days, but then a weather front came in and brought cooler weather, and I think some rain. We unfortunately had to leave before that fire wrapped up. So fire rolls are either 14 to 21 days, and we were hitting our last day, so we had to leave before we could finish that fire. But they brought in other crews too. Like I think they had a crew from Ohio there as well. So there's always like rotating to make sure that firefighters don't get burned out or just physically, mentally exhausted.
Yeah, 14 days straight and you're talking 12 to 18 hours at I mean, wow, this old girl couldn't handle that.
Yeah, most of the town was okay. There were a few buildings that did get burned because they just moved super fast and super hot. And the topography really played a role in that, because it was in a canyon and it kind of just funneled the fire through it. But we did end up protecting a lot of those structures, which was great. There was one like outbuilding that we couldn't save because no matter what we did, because some electric lines fell on the building, like a tree fell on the electric lines, and then that fell on the,
It sparked another fire.
yeah. So unfortunately that happens, and that's also another hidden danger to firefighting is electrical lines, gas lines too. Like sometimes we can't go in areas because lines are down, so we have to wait for the power company to shut off power, which in this case, they actually had to shut down the power to a huge area. So like somewhat of a bigger city that was like about an hour away had their power shut off because of this fire for a little bit. Luckily, they were able to isolate it and then brought power back to the major city, and then we could work.
Gotcha.
But I do have to say though, they sent their electric crews out there too, and they were fixing those lines while we were cleaning up after that initial fire wave. So they're pretty brave.
That's
I give them
such a
credit.
diff because around here, we have a major storm and the crews are out, restoring power after storms around here. But I never considered the fact that fire would affect power to them. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
A different part of the country, they got different threats that are facing them. And so then you did that fire, and then but then this is a different fire, right?
Yes. This one happened before I went to Idaho. This is near where I work. And it was on a weekend, and that they needed people to work the engine because they were giving some of their guys a break. They have like 7-day staffing. And so myself and a hydrologist who was also firefighting qualified, we were out on patrolling, and then we got the call of this fire. And this happened when a storm blew through, so this was lightning caused. But as you can see here, another variable with fire is fire can create its own weather, and you can see here that it's creating its own vortex in 2 spots. So
oh yeah, look at the fire, the smoke spinning around. Now,
yeah.
So calling these fires, and I'm picturing, I was out in Glacier several years ago. In fact, several of us went on that trip, and I remember like seeing some fire towers. Is that like a primary source for finding out about these fires in these remote areas, or
some areas, yes. In some areas, in Idaho, and Montana, they heavily use fire towers. And while we were there in Idaho, you can hear them checking in over the radios. They have a morning check-in and an afternoon check-in with dispatch. There were a lot of fire towers in the Idaho area. In the area I work, we don't utilize fire towers. We mostly utilize helicopter, aerial surveillance, and ground crews.
Gotcha. So this, you say, it wasn't too far from your office?
Where I work usually. I mean, this was probably about like an hour and a half.
Okay.
And this is probably like an hour and a half from where I work. Our area that we cover is pretty big. We cover like 1.5 mountain ranges, and this was mostly on BLM and private land. So a lot of agencies work together for firefighting. I mean, on the Idaho fire, we had private contractors, we had state, we had BLM, we had Forest Service, we had National Park. Every land management agency seems to have their own fire program nowadays, because fires are huge out west now. And just with climate change and drought and weather regimes changing, firefighting has definitely changed over the past few decades. But yeah, so we got to this fire about 6 o'clock, and we're greeted with that. It was
This
it was
is
pretty
6 o'clock in the
intimidating.
evening
Yes, 6 o'clock in the evening.
on a Saturday or a weekend, you said?
It was like on a Friday night, and so yeah, we got there and we tried our best to contain it, and we worked until like about midnight, and just kind of went to a stopping point. And luckily the fire was dying down because of the temperature going down as well, because you're taking that heat out of the fire, and the humidity was rising, so that helps with firefighting as well. With higher humidity, more moisture in the air, less dry, helps with slowing down fires. So we just kind of went to bed, camped out right at the base of those hills. It's kind of crazy.
So you're sleeping on the ground with the fire burning above you, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It just like, okay, cool. I wonder how much sleep I'm gonna get tonight, but luckily we got some good sleep, and then we woke up the next morning and it was out. The temperature had gotten pretty low enough so that the heat didn't fuel the fire even more, and it just kind of burned itself out. So the next day we do something called mop up, where we find hot spots and kind of stir them around, take that heat out, and make sure that the edge of the fire is cold. That's also called cold trailing, making sure that the edge of the fire has no heat, so that the fire doesn't spread even more. But luckily it was pretty cold, and on the hotter sides we did get some aerial help, and they put down retardant lines, which really knocked down the fire. So
you didn't get any on you this time?
No. I had a great view of the air show, but none of it got on me. But
no, so I'm looking, this
side.
looks like a pretty broad line here that this fire was following. Do you notice, like, do you ever see wildlife like running away from these things, or is it just such a common occurrence? They can sense there's fire in the area and they just get out, or?
I think it's a little bit of both. Wildlife do run from fires, depending on how fast the fire is. Most animals do get out of the way. I mean, in this fire, I'm sure unfortunately, I think some snakes did not make it, which I love snakes, so I am sad. But I didn't see any remnants, so hopefully they got into a cold enough burrow, and didn't look alive there. But on fires, you do come across animals that just didn't make it, but then you also come across things that like old skeletons of animals that have died, and then the brush clears it away and you see some cool anatomy going on there.
Well, I remember from my very limited experience here helping out with prescribed burns, how birds of prey would come around. It's almost like they recognize the plumes of smoke as an opportunity to come in and grab some voles or some rabbits. I don't know if that's something. This is a really big area. When we're doing a prescribed burn here, especially within the park district, we're only doing a few acres at a time, and you'd see a red tail, circling overhead, and then you'd see them, drop down because there was some easy pickings there. I didn't know if that was something that occurs in a larger scale fire too, or.
I haven't noticed because most of my focus was on making sure that everyone
Paying
is
attention to
safe.
what you're doing.
Yeah, because it is a dangerous job, and you have to have your head on a swivel, especially when you're fighting in like timbered areas. There's snags and stuff, so you always have to make sure that you're looking out for everybody, and everybody's looking out for you. So unfortunately, I can't really say much to that. Unfortunately, but I do see a good question here in the comments here. How long did you have to train before being a qualified or trained to be qualified to fight fires? And so to be qualified, you have to do what's called, well, there's a few things. There's two options. One, you can attend guard school, which is a week-long program where you do a lot of classroom work. There's certain classes that you have to take, fire behavior, incident command. There's some FEMA classes that you have to take, natural disaster classes that you have to take. So they go through that. Another option is to do it all online. There's a website like the National Wildlife Coordination Center. You can take classes on there. But with the guard school too, you have on your last day a live training, whether it's with real fire or in my case, when I did the last day of guard school, it was raining. So you just had the engine bosses just kind of scream, "The fire's over there. It's coming downhill." And so kind of like getting,
Use your imagination.
yeah. So you have to go through guard school or take the required classes and then take a field day. Then you have to do the pack test, which is, again, the 45 pounds, 45 minutes, 3 miles. And luckily out here in Wyoming, we have an extra minute. So it's 46 minutes because we're at such a high elevation that your body's kind of working a little harder because there's lack of oxygen. I mean, right now I'm sitting at my house is at 6,820 feet. Now where we do our pack test, which is the high school track, is like about near 7,000 feet. So they do take elevation into consideration. But when I was working in Oregon and did the pack test there, it was 45 minutes.
Well, and it said in the email invite that you live in Saratoga. That's in southeastern Wyoming, correct?
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yep. So we do have despite this photo, we do have forest. This was in the sagebrush. Our forest is surrounded by sagebrush. I like it. We live in a lodgepole pine forest, and lodgepole pine historically relied on forest fires, but with Smokey the Bear. Don't get me wrong, Smokey's awesome, but his message.
Only you can prevent fires.
Natural fires have been part of the ecosystem for eons. There's historical records or fossil records of fires in prehistoric times. Even there's been dinosaurs that have fossilized in landslides caused by forest fires, which is pretty cool. Wow. But we kind of hit fire suppression really hard because, well, timber is a resource that is economically important. And so fire was viewed as a somewhat of like an evil entity. And so we let our forests grow and not get cleaned up by forest fires, which lodgepole actually does need open canopy for its seedlings to grow. It does not like being shaded out. And I think I'm not a forester, but I think their cones also need fire, but mostly that open ground, free of shade. And so our forest got crowded, and with crowds, the beetle, the mountain pine beetle came through, and the mountain pine beetle is actually a native beetle. It's just that with climate change, the winters hadn't gotten below freezing for long duration, so it survived the winter and then just started attacking our forest. And then there's a lot of dead stuff, and then it just became a tinderbox. So
Wow.
yeah, so that's why we're kind of we're very cautious when it comes to fire out here. We hit it hard now again too, because if we get a huge fire, it's just going to take off, and we have a lot of fuel, and it's a bad situation. But part of my job as a wildlife biologist, we do work with timber, and we kind of are, what's the word I'm looking for?
That's what we're looking at here, right? These pictures.
Yes. Yeah. So we try to mechanically remove fuels from the forest instead of waiting for the next big fire to come through. So we try to take down a lot of the dead and down, and we have prescriptions. And one of the things in our prescriptions is burn piles. And so we burn during the winter time when we know it's not going to create a huge forest fire, but we create those openings for our forest to regenerate and in a safe way.
I mean, the burn pile, how high are those flames? Like 15 feet or so, 20 feet?
It gets pretty toasty. They're huge. Like some of those loggers really like to make huge piles, and it can they get pretty big. And so we have to get the right conditions so that we don't actually set our own forest on fire. So we make sure that it's not a windy day. We make sure that there's enough snow on the ground, and we definitely keep an eye on them.
So this would be like what, December, January type of work?
Yeah, so it all depends on how much snow is on the ground, but it can start anywhere from November and go all the way until like April, sometimes May, depending on how much snow we get. So I sometimes help out on these burns when I'm not on the computer trying to crunch data and spit out reports. And sometimes my boss is like, well, you've been staring at the screen too long. You can go out and help them.
Go burn some things.
Yeah, go burn some things, basically. Yeah.
Now this little vehicle here, is that's how you guys get around? Doesn't look like.
That's one of the ways. We use four-wheelers, we use UTVs, we use snowmobiles, especially in the wintertime, the deep wintertime. We do use snowmobiles to go out and burn piles, because a lot of our roads close down. They get snowed in because we're at like 12,000 feet in the mountains, sometimes up to 14,000. Okay, not 14. Well, down in Colorado, yes, 14,000, but most of ours are like 12 to 9,000 feet. Okay. And our roads are like that too. So yeah, it gets a little tricky to travel in the forest.
Oh, very cool. Well, Allison, I just looked at the time. We're just about out of time. I'm gonna stop the screen share here, and I'll turn it over to the group to see if anybody has any other questions for you. All looks pretty, I don't know if I'm still kind of stuck on this 12-hour day, 14-day work week.
Yeah,
thing.
It's pretty long. Yeah. But
you love it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's you don't love it. Sometimes you're just like, why am I here? What did I get myself into? But then other times it's like, yeah. But looking back on it, you just, especially when you're protecting structures and stuff like that, you look back and you feel like you did some good.
Well, here we got a question. Meredith want to know, how did you end up in this job?
Well, I really loved the outdoors. Growing up, I was always outside, and so I knew I wanted to do something outdoors, and I loved wildlife. So once I graduated high school, I went out west and got a degree I actually got a degree in ecological restoration, and then with a minor in wildlife. and did seasonal jobs with the federal government, and anywhere from botany to wildlife, and then got a permanent job doing wildlife. And then during those seasonal stints, I did get into fire. I was interested in fire because living in the Midwest, you don't really have to worry about wildfires. And I just was very interested in fire ecology, and the best way to witness fire ecology in action is to actually, well, be part of the firefighting world. And I also really liked, I don't know, I really like the physical fitness part of it too. It's physically demanding, but it's a, I don't know, it's a good feeling too. Also, you get to travel, you get to meet so many. I think the main thing, what I really like about wildland firefighting is that you meet so many people who love the outdoors too, just as much as you, and you become a family. Like the wildland firefighting community is a family. And like I have friends in South Dakota, I have friends in Florida. You just meet so many different people.
I mean, because I remember you were up in northern Minnesota. You've been in Oregon a couple different times. Black Hills, right? You were doing
Yep.
some small mammal study out there. And because that's a whole. Maybe we can have you on another time. You can talk about the wildlife aspect of your job.
Yeah.
The spotted owl
Mhm.
things you were working on when you were in Oregon. That might, if you can spending a little more time with us another time, Allison, maybe we can have you back.
Yeah, no, I would love to, because I have some crazy stories from working with spotted owls and surveying for spotted owls, and yeah, it's working at night alone. There's a lot of interesting things that happen in the woods at night.
what could go wrong, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, it
yeah.
looks like we got a couple other chats here.
Okay.
Susie says thank you, and Jerry said that she had friends who had to evacuate from Louisville, Colorado, and it happened in the winter, which is odd. Is climate change making winter fires more likely? Friends were okay, as was their house.
Oh, good. Yeah. So what we're seeing out here, we're kind of in a drought, and also we're not getting as much snow as we usually do. Snow levels have been kind of low in the past few years, especially in this area. I think last year we got up to normal for once, but it was very late in the season, like in March. But yeah, with climate change, just the whole weather systems are kind of shifting. And so we're not seeing as much moisture as we usually do. We don't get as much snow as we do. We don't get as cold as we usually do. So it weather patterns are changing fire regime too. So that's a whole nother subject too with weather, and just we're doing our best to try to keep up with the science, and like kind of having these climate models predict what's going to happen each summer, like what months are going to be our hottest months, and it's a challenge.
Well, and to your point, and Jerry's friends, I mean, it's always kind of been a given that you at least get a break come winter.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like that's not always the case now.
Yeah. In 2020, we had a huge fire here. Actually, a few days before I started this job, there was a huge fire that started on our forest. And I mean, they said it was unheard of because I forgot how many acres. It was ridiculous. It's one of the biggest fires that they had in this area. And temperatures were like in the 30s, and it was still burning. And they were even snowed on, and it was still burning because it was just so dry, and the fuel was just so dry.
And this was in wintertime.
It was in like September, like late September.
Wow.
Yeah. And they had already a huge snowstorm before that. And it just melted and dried up, and yeah.
Well, Allison, this has been awesome. You're getting rave reviews, and I can't tell you how grateful that you were able to carve out a part of your Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
I'm sure Nova's going to be thinking, when am I going to get my FaceTime?
Oh,
I
man.
see she's giving up on us. Huh?
She's relaxing. I think she had a huge day of making sure that the deer didn't destroy anything in the front yard, because it's that time of year where the deer are in rut and they're just the town deer.
Sure.
They're huge.
Well, yeah, we'll have to have you on again so we can hear more about your rest of your job. And I'd love to know more about Saratoga too. It sounds like a really nice slice of heaven there in
It
southeastern.
is. Yeah, it's a small town, but full of nice people. I mean, I think we have less than 2,000 people here.
But Hot
And
Springs, right? Springs. Like I had
Yes, we
to
do
look
have
up
hot
the name of
springs.
the town. I kept thinking in my head it was Saratoga Springs, but that's a part
no,
of the town, right?
yeah, we have hot springs that are free to the public. I think when the town was first established, there was a guy who owned the hot springs. And then when he passed away, he donated it to the town of Saratoga so that the community could have free access to the hot springs. And so, yeah, you can actually, it's open 24 hours, 7 days a week, all year round.
I got to travel more. I got to get out more.
I have a
Yeah,
guest room.
maybe we could. we'll talk about that another time, Allison. If you agree to come back, we'd love to have you. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time tonight, and everybody else appreciate your time. And hope you have a great week of good nature, and we'll see you back again next week.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, and thanks for listening to me ramble on about wildland
was
firefighting in the
awesome.
West.
Fantastic.
I'd love to
Allison.
come back.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Allison.
Allison. Thanks,
Take
Pam.
Thanks,
care.
Allison.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Allison.
Pam.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Night,
Have a good
everybody.
evening, everyone.